Do this for me.
Just for you.
For me.
Okay.
For me.
All right, please put your hands together for Shedrack.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Shedrack Akintayo. You can call me Shedi. So, fun fact.
Shedi,
Yeah.
give me one. Please, while Shedi is giving this talk, yeah, if you are at the back, yes, and you are engaging in some conversations that is unholy, please come forward and sit down. Please, don't distract me. I want to focus. Shedrack, go ahead. Yeah. But this your clothes might not leave you today.
So, fun fact, the last time I gave an in-person talk was at Oscar Fest in 2020. And the first time I'm giving an in-person talk in 2 years is still at Oscar Fest in 2020. And I've given like 20 talks since then. So, thank you, Oscar, for the opportunity. So, let's just get started. Who am I? I'm a developer relations engineer at platform.sh. I don't know if you know Platform, but I'm not here to sell you my company. I previously worked at the Cloud Foundry Foundation, which is a project under the Linux Foundation. Hi, Chris. I'm also the founder of DevRel Community Africa, where we are trying to start up a DevRel community in Africa. I'm a technical writer. I've written for Log Rockets, Container Journals, Machine Magazine, etc. I'm an Auth0 ambassador, and I am part of the organizing team of this festival. So that's that. So this entire talk is basically of my experience at the Cloud Foundry Foundation, where, in the pandemic, doing DevRel in the pandemic is like really, really different. So that's basically what my entire talk is about, my time at Cloud Foundry. So if Cloud Foundry can watch this, shout out to Cloud Foundry, every single person at Cloud Foundry. So basically, developer relations isn't just for corporate companies, yeah? Developer relations is for every community of developers. So if you see the large number of developer relations people we have, most of them are like, corporates, but I'm here to tell you that even you can also do DevRel in, open source as long as developers are there. So what is developer relations? How many of us have heard about developer relations? Like, you've seen it somewhere, I talk about it a lot on my social media, so if you've seen it, yeah, fine, great. So a friend of mine, which is like a very close person to me, and I learned a lot from her, Mary is the director of developer relations at Communda. She said, I really love this definition, like my favorite definition of DevRel. Developer relations is a group of developer advocates, technical community manager, technical ambassadors, documentation writers, trainers, and more who exist basically to empower developers to do their best work. So I exist to empower every single developer to do their best work, depending on what part of the ecosystem I am at. So, this is basically what we are going to talk about today. What is developer relations to the open source software community? So it's basically about caring for developers, educating, giving and collecting feedback from the community. Every single open source software has a community, yes or no? Basically, every single has a community. So the act of basically collecting, caring for your developers, people that use your software, educating, growing, and collecting feedback from them is how we can, find developer relations in open source communities. And it can come in any form, like, community management, documentation, technical writing, even design. It can come in any form. So why should you care? Why should OSS communities care about developer relations? I'm pretty sure that a couple of us here are like part of one open source community or the other. Maybe the Linux Foundation, maybe CNCF, maybe somewhere. Even Oscar is an open source community, yeah? So why should OSS communities care about developer relations? Developers are the core of every open source software community, yes or no? Right? Developers are the one building all this open source software, yes or no? Okay, great. So it creates a sense of empathy toward developers. Yeah. So when I am listening to my developers, when the project leaders are listening to developers, it shows that there's like a sense of care in that community, which will basically lead to the growth of that community. It empowers developers to be able to utilize the software properly. How many of us can use a software without documentation? No, I give you a software that I built and I say, okay, figure it out. Doesn't work. Oh, you can do it. Okay, just one in like 1 million. So it's very, very important to be able to utilize, to be able to create, content for developers that help them do their best work, that basically use their software. That's the importance of good documentation. It enables collaboration internally and between other communities. So one thing I love about open source communities is the fact that there's collaboration, right? Everybody's working together with each other to basically make that software work, yeah? It could be answering issues in GitHub. It could be sending pull requests to fix a particular part of the software you are using. So it encourages that sense of collaboration between the community members and even externally. You can see somebody in the Kubernetes community, linking up with somebody maybe in the AWS community. I don't know, probably. So that synergy between those two communities is one of the reasons why OSS communities should care about developer relations. I worked in an open source community, a really large open source community, and I've collaborated with like a couple of people that are not even in the Cloud Foundry ecosystem. So developers will feel like their voices are heard. This is like the most important part of every community. Every single person in a community needs to have a voice, right? That community cannot grow if every single person is not heard. It doesn't matter whether it's the maintainer, it doesn't matter if it's someone that's using the software. Every single person in the community needs to have a voice. That's one of the reasons why OSS communities should focus and pay more attention to developer relations. Then it creates a healthier community. Who wants to be part of a toxic community? Okay. Anybody? Okay, nobody. Great. So it creates a healthier community, and this can foster proper collaboration. It can foster proper growth of the project generally. So next up is how do we pay more attention? You've listened to me, right? I've given you reasons. I've given you examples as to why developer communities, open source communities should care about developer relations. So how do we pay more attention to developer relations as an open source community? Okay, so first things first, you need to listen to the community, very important. You need to take your time, listen to what the community members have to say. Very, very important. Feedback is important in every single aspect of life. Not just, tech, not just, design, every single thing. Listening to the community is important because that way you can know where needs was and what you need to fix. The next step is, as an OSS community, you need to understand what you are trying to achieve, right? So the thing about developer relations is that you have to set goals, right? You cannot just, pump resources into something without seeing results. So you need to come together as a team and sit down and like, okay, we're trying to start an open source software community. We're trying to focus on developer relations as a community. What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to gain, yeah? So it's very, very important. You need to learn from other OSS communities, getting developer relations right. Vue.js is really, really doing well. I'm not a Vue.js person, but of course I'm going to give a shout out to Vue.js community. Really, really, the docs are great. Feedback is implemented fast. So shout out to Evan, you and every single person in the Vue.js team. So the React.js team, I'm a React person, so React is doing the great work, trying to improve their ecosystem, trying to improve every single part of the community. Gatsby, maybe I don't know. Gatsby was doing well at some point, but I don't know. Something happened. I don't know. Sorry. I'm not trying to throw shades at anybody. Sorry. I'm not trying to throw shades, so I'm just going to skip. Drupal. So one of the the communities doing well, I've been a part of is Drupal. Drupal is doing so well in terms of collaborating with other communities, in terms of doing proper events, proper documentation. I don't write Drupal, yeah, but the company I joined is a very big sponsor of Drupal. So I've been fortunate to be part of their events and even speak at their events. And to be honest, their open source community, they are really, really doing developer relations the right way. So shout out to Drupal. So developing a strategy is very important, right? You cannot just jump into the fire. You need to know how you jump into the fire. So that was a bad joke. Developing a strategy is very important. You need to know, how do I implement a developer relations process in my open source community. So you can do that by speaking to a community member that have done it before. You can reach out to other communities that have done it, reach out and say, can we have a talk? Can you just tell me something about this? You can read resources online. I have a lot of resources around that. Sorry, I'm not selling myself. So don't be ashamed to fail. So the thing about DevRel is there's a lot of failure at the early stage. If you should basically be open to failing and reiterating, then trying out various strategies until you find what works for your community. So DevRel, there's no right way to do DevRel. You need to find what works for your community, yeah? You cannot. So if you are joining a DevRel team, please tell upper management that we are going to be reiterating and experimenting until you find what works for your team, or else you're going to be in a lot of problems. So you need to not be ashamed to fail. Very, very important, because anything can happen. You need to go back to the drawing board, figure out what works for you, learn from other communities, then come back. So keep experimenting till you get it right. Just like I said, you keep reiterating, finding out what works for your community, trying your best to see what works. Experiment as much as possible. That's one of the reasons why I love DevRel. You get the freedom, you get the resources, you get the budget to do anything basically, and it's really, really nice. So keep experimenting until you get it right. So how to build an effective developer relations program in an open source community. So there's no right way to do it, like I said. This is based on my experience. I'm just going to give that disclaimer. Based on my experience working at the Cloud Foundation. So let's get started. So the first thing is, you need to understand the demographic of your community, yeah? You need to understand, the people that are males, females, not gendered folks, people from Africa, people from, you need to be able to track this. You need to know where needs what, because the way DevRel is done in Nigeria will probably be different from the way DevRel is done in Europe, yeah? Very, very different. So you need to understand your demographic, very, very important. You need to provide feedback avenues for folks in your community. Take feedback, very, very important. It helps you, grow your program, helps you fix any loopholes. You need to make your community inclusive and accessible. Yeah, you need to make sure that every single person is. There's nothing like race. There's nothing. Every single person is just one in your community. Accessibility. Make your docs more. Make your documentation more. Screen reader friendly. All those accessibility stuff. Then community reward programs. So one very tricky thing I've seen. One very important thing I've seen is that even though open source is free, yeah, even though open source is, you need to volunteer, but you need to give people an incentive, yeah? You need to give them a reason to want to continue doing more. So rewarding your community is very important, yeah? You need to find your heroes, you need to find your champions and reward them. Very, very important. So great documentation for the technology. Nothing beats great documentation, right? I pick up a software, I build out an entire software system by just reading documentation. That's so cool, yeah? That's the point of having a documentation. So great documentation is important. Then collaborating with other communities, so that every part of the community is moving correctly. More tutorials and use cases, very, very important. You want people to be able to type in a keyword in Google about your software, about your technology, and they see it, right? You don't want people trying to figure out how to use your software themselves. Very important. Now, organizing talks and webinars, this will keep you connected to your community. We have, over the past 2 years where we've had to deal with the pandemic, everybody's inside. We have to do everything virtually. This is one way I've been able to, I was able to keep in touch with the community. So, just to check in with everybody, very important. So how to measure success in an open source community when doing DevRel? Because the thing about DevRel is success is very, very important. You need to know if you're doing it right. Here's what I think. Don't measure success. Don't. Trust me, don't measure success, because this is an open source, right? This is an open source community, right? It's a non-profit. We're not trying to make profit, yeah? But the main thing is that you just need to measure your impacts, growth, and quality of your community instead. You need to see how well your community has grown. You need to know how many people can easily talk about how they are feeling about a particular, incident. That's very, very important. Measuring success is capitalism type of stuff. There's no capitalism in open source. We're trying to not do that. So measure impact, growth, and quality of your community instead. Very, very important. And if your developer relations effort is successful, if you think it's successful, your community members will tell you. Yeah? So this is one of the reasons why you do not need to measure success, right? If you just have a random DM from one of your community members, I'm like, wow, I feel very, very comfortable in this community. I feel like I know every single thing I need to know about this community. That's success there, yeah? That you do not need to have a spreadsheet measuring how many clicks do we have on this, how many, people are at our events. No, that's not important in the open source community. I mean, I do that where I work, though. I mean, that's capitalism, man. So, lastly, do not be big on so much success and numbers. Instead, just make sure to provide care for new and existing community members through the educational content and overall developer experience, yeah? Developer experience is very important when using any software. The way I click XYZ in XYZ is, if I do it in a very easy way compared to the other, projects, developer experience here is great. So I'm creating for developers, yeah? We are building stuff for developers. It's very, very important. And thank you for coming to my talk. My name is Shedrack. Follow me on Twitter if you want. Follow me, _black. I share stuff on DevRel and on my website, shade.xyz. And I just want to take a selfie with everybody here one last time. So, I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Shall go show, Sha.
Oh, yeah, come show. Okay, how do we do this? No, take this. Do it. You are taller.
All right.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to my talk. My name is Shedrack Akintayo.